Crazy world we live in, man. It's a crazy world we live in. You see what's going on in the news. You see for every symbolic win, there's a substantial loss that follows that coincides with that win. And while we focus on the wins, we focus on the gain for the day, we're oblivious to the things that are being taken away as we win. I mean, just look for example with how since the election, since Joe Biden won the election, you notice the spate of anti-voting rights laws that have been prevalent around the country, pushed by the GOP. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna continue to say this: the biggest hypocrites in politics are fucking Republicans. Anyway, so Democrats won with Joe Biden. Black people, we're not gonna get into that because you neither won nor lost. But Democrats won with Joe Biden. Republicans are mad. So what are they doing? While we celebrate Joe Biden, they're changing up the laws. They're rigging the game. That's all it really is. So every little win we may eke out, they're gonna rig the game to not let that happen. That's the whole point. But anyway, needless to say, Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all three charges: second and third degree murder, as well as manslaughter. The facts of the case do speak for themselves, and the videos of the encounter make for an open and shut case. But minorities in this wonderful, great country know that when it comes to justice for us, it's never just us. It's never open and shut. And with that in mind, the community has to put pressure on the establishment to do the right thing. Because we tell people how we want to be treated. We direct people how we want to be treated. If they treat us a certain way and we don't say anything, we don't say that it's offensive or we don't like it, we don't say don't treat us this way, we are complicit. We are complicit in our own maltreatment and mistreatment. We are. But like I said, the community has to keep its foot on the neck of the oppressors through some would call civil disobedience, i.e., protesting. Now, one cannot say that nationwide protest in the wake of George Floyd's death and many others did not contribute to the pressure that America is under right now to do the right thing. Obviously, the protests, nationwide protests, global protests about what is going on, applied some pressure in what's going on today. But in Florida, good old Florida, Florida is its own world, its own country, its own everything. But in Florida, that pressure that we're trying to keep on the necks of the establishment, that pressure is being stifled. It's being lifted, it's being removed. Why? Simply put, last week, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis gutted citizens' right to protest by signing HB1. If you don't know what HB1 is, it's what Republicans are calling the anti-riot bill. Now, this anti-riot bill, per ABC local affiliate Local 10 reports that the bill calls for stiffer penalties and fines for those arrested during protests. The bill also pressures local governments not to exercise restraint when dealing with protesters. Do not exercise restraint. Sounds dictatorish, don't you think? Heavy-handed, don't you think? If we're protesting, heavy-handed policing Your response to protesting heavy-handed policing is to pass a bill that that hinders local government's ability to exercise restraint when dealing with protesters. How backwards, retarded, asinine shit is that? The very thing that people are protesting is what you're putting into play to deal with the protester. Fucking genius. Only in Florida, but not really. But anyway, the bill also pressures local governments not to exercise restraint when dealing with protesters. Should local governments call for police to stand down and things turn chaotic? Per the governor, those governments are now liable and can be sued. Another key takeaway from this bill is the roadblock it creates when it comes to defunding the police. You know, you've heard that cry over and over now for at least the last 6 months. Defund the police. Defund the police. You've heard yay, you've heard nay, you've heard here, you've heard there and everywhere. You've heard everything for, you heard everything against. Defund the police. Now, defunding the police is not only a catchphrase or a motto, but it's also a call to action that has gained momentum over the last several months and has been nipped in the bud in the good old state of Florida with DeSantis signing HB1. Because in HB1, it literally ties the hands of local government, preventing them from doing anything to defund the police. Whatever you're funding the police now, you cannot take away from that. You can no longer defund. You cannot defund the police. That is what DeSantis is saying. Even if actually, I guess even if you take away responsibilities from police that shouldn't have been there in the first place, for example, answering to mental health crises, you don't see freaking police reporting to a fire. They're not fighting the fire. Police aren't fucking putting people in ambulances and administering the freaking oxygen and taking their vitals and triaging and all that stuff. When you call about someone having a heart attack, that's not what it's not police answer. You have medics to answer for that. You have the firefighters that answer for fires. So you got responsibilities that don't belong to police that they're actually being called for. Then you take away those responsibilities. What, they're still going to maintain that same funding? Less responsibilities, less funding. You don't need that funding if you can't handle that responsibility in the first place. But anyway, I digress. Last week, well, the week before actually, last week, the First District Court of Appeals ruled that Marsy's Law, a law meant to protect crime victims, applied to cops who choose to hide their identities from the public after using deadly force. Per the appellate court, a police officer meets the definition of a crime victim when a crime suspect threatens the officer with deadly force, placing the officer in fear of his life. What the hell does that mean? Because now we just said a lot that's going on. This is another thing that's happening. They're now saying that cops can hide their identity when involved in shootings, for example, or shootings or killings of citizens. For example, if Marsy's Law, well, I'm sorry, if this law would have been in effect, in Minnesota, you would have never known Derek Chauvin's name. You would have never known Derek Chauvin's name. If this law would have been in effect around the country, there's a lot of cops that would have easily slipped through the cracks. You would have never known their name. All you would have known is that yet another person died at the hands of police. And the only way you'd be able to get the name is if you had some civilian video that captured the name tag or heard it in conversation on the video. And then, of course, they could try to put a gag order on the video, but once it's out in the cloud, that's it. It's out everywhere. So, good luck trying to censor it. But this is just yet another example of every one two steps that we think we're making forward, they're intentionally making 10 steps back. You thinking you're making progress on one side of the struggle, on one fight, but at the same time as you're making this progress over here, you're regressing. You're being pulled backwards on the other side. That's just the name of the game. That's the name of the game. That's how they're playing it. So in the state of Florida, at least, good old Floridians, black, white, Chinese, Asian Americans, Latin Americans, Haitian Americans, Caribbean Americans, all Floridians. Just listen up. Listen up. In the state of Florida, at least, don't expect justice from Uncle Sam when it comes to wrongful death at the hands of Uncle Sam's goons. Now, back to defunding the police. Despite claims to the contrary, that does not mean reducing officers' pay or unequipping them. Rather, defund the police means to no longer require cops to handle events and situations that are not relevant to their job duties. When you're having a medical episode, you call 911. It's not the police that show up. It's the medics. When you have a fire, it's the fire department who responds. I mean, yes, you may have some nosy cops that follow along with these calls as well, but they are not the primary, they're not the first responder. They are a backup responder. They are not the first responder or primary responder. Now, the same way it should be for other types of calls that don't require the long arm of Johnny Law, but rather the compassionate care of trained individuals like in mental health crises. Now, funds that go into bloated budgets for cops to take on more activities unrelated to their jobs are better served in programs that meet the needs of the community that is being protected and served. I mean, for example, again, mental health. I mean, when we have mental health programs or mental health responders or technicians that are on call, that when there's a mental health situation, it's like, yo, bloop, bloop. Hey, we got a situation. We need your help. And they go out there. Why not? Have a program set up and they can get paid for that as well. I mean, they ain't got to sit on the clock like a regular cop. But every time they get called out, they get paid. They get paid for that. I mean, it's simple. That's what you could defund that portion of the budget of the police and put it into a mental health program to pay for these mental health technicians when you need them. But anyway, why is it our community that is missing out on being protected? Why is it our community that is missing out on being served? It's more like our community is being preyed and poached on. These are the things to keep in mind come election time. We must vote out these individuals who no longer serve the needs of the people like they swore to do. It is time that we adopt a new mindset. That time is now to walk them down. We must demand from the establishment to be treated the way we deserve, want, and ask to be treated, not the way we allow them to treat us. We need to pull a Chauvin and keep our foot, our knee on their necks until they can't breathe, and still hold it there longer until they submit to the truth that we, in fact, are equal human beings. Pay attention to what's going on there. Pay attention to what's going on in the news. Pay attention to what's going on in the country. Pay attention to what's going on in your locality, your municipality, your city, your state governments. Look at the rules that are being passed. Pay attention. They're making it harder for you. They're making it harder for you. They're criminalizing innocent behavior. Just like with the stupid law in fucking Georgia about, if you hand somebody a bottle of water in the freaking voting line, it's against the law. It's a crime. Criminalizing that. They criminalize what they can't control and deal with. They criminalize what they don't want to deal with. They criminalize what they don't want to fund to improve. That is what they criminalize. That's capitalism for you. If they can capitalize on it, they will criminalize it for capitalism. And that's all I got to say. Just pay attention, folks. Pay attention. See the rules, see the laws. I mean, here in the state of Florida, you know what I mean? Like I said, they're got the anti-riot bill, making it harder for governments to tell police to stand down, and they got the law now where you can't even defund the police. I mean, and then on top of that, you're saying, oh, cops are now allowed to hide their identities when involved in an altercation in a situation with citizens, and that citizen ends up dead. The cop, who is the aggressor, gets to now be the victim. Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention. Pay attention.